The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that's happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being here. We want you to get involved. Our email address is feedback@doubletap.online. Of course, if you want to find us on Twitter, it is @DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. We will get to your emails and your tweets either here, maybe on Double Tap Canada, which is on Thursdays, now live, Stephen Scott. Live on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio. Stephen, how are you feeling this week? We're talking all about things that fold, and I'm not talking about your laundry.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, and not me either. I don't fold either. Well, there are various folds. Let's not go there. Yeah, I'm very excited about this. There's a lot of new technology, a new form factor we're going to talk about this hour, and I'm really keen to get your views and your experiences on one new piece of hardware in particular that I know it's taken you, let's just say, a couple of people and thousands of miles to get to you.
People, miles, and dollars to get to me. And that device, Stephen, is the Surface Duo. But I don't want to talk about it just yet because we're going to spend some time talking about it with our guest who's going to be joining us soon. But I want to talk about the form factor because we're kind of in our second generation now of this folding form factor for smartphones. If you take a look at my hand here, this is the Samsung Galaxy Flip. Yeah, I always mix up the fold and the flip. The fold is the one that opens like a book. The flip is the one that kind of reminds you of every single phone we ever had for many, many years, and it flips open like a flip phone.
Yep.
But the interesting thing about these phones is that the actual screen itself, the OLED display, is a folding plastic display, which I think inherently makes these devices kind of, I don't know, just kind of old school.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I love the clamshell phones. I think, I'll be honest, I think they were much more popular in North America than they were here. They died off very early in the UK. But, you know, I still loved mine. I loved the satisfaction when you were hanging up a call or slamming it shut. I loved that. You could just, yeah, exactly, slam it shut. That was it. You don't get that anymore. You can't do that by, you know, tapping a virtual button on a touchscreen. So, you know, I do love that aspect of it. I think the flip idea makes a lot of sense because, like you say, it's something we're used to. It's these new fold devices where the device comes together to either form one screen or become multiple screens. I think gets a little bit more interesting. Whether or not they're useful or not, I don't know. I can't in my head envisage a time where I would need it. Although I do quite like the idea, especially with the Samsung Fold. I love the idea of two screens coming together to almost form a mini, well, I dare say iPad. Tab, I guess, in Samsung's case.
Tablet, yes. But, you know, is that how we got here? Are we trying to make our phones too big? So now the only solution to make them even bigger in terms of screen real estate is to make something that folds? Is that why we're here?
No.
I'm trying to figure out how we got to this point.
No, we're not there because of that. Look, I'm a massive cynic, as you know. We're here because the phone manufacturers have realised we're not buying new phones, so they've created something whole new, different style that they just hope we'll latch on to. And they're right. Because of course we're going to, especially us geeks, we're going to jump on this kind of thing. I'll be honest, I'm kind of waiting for Apple to do it because they'll do it right. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see.
I think Apple's in a holding pattern, though. I think they're waiting to see what different form factors other people are going to adopt and what the success rate is before they even dive down. I'm sure, of course, they are testing things on the hardware side. They work, you know, well ahead. I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 years ahead of time on different form factors until they become adopted or actually commercialized. But the one that really got my fancy is that Surface Duo for Microsoft. You know, they announced this on stage. There was a keynote about a year ago where Panos Panay was on the stage announcing two folding devices. One which was more of the tablet form factor that ran a version of Windows they call Windows X, and that device is called the Neo. That was supposed to be out this time of year, but instead they'd switched priorities during COVID and they started to really focus on the Duo, which is this dual screen form factor, not Windows device. It's an Android device. What's your take on that kind of decision, not putting Windows on a device like this and going with Android? Is it because it's established and it's something they can easily get to market? Or is it just a way to, you know, kind of bridge the gap?
No, I think you've hit it on the head. It's about getting it to market with something that's usable. It's something that's, I mean, look, Windows Mobile never worked. And I think to bring that back in 2020 would have been ridiculous. So the idea of going with something like Android, having that partnership with an already established brand. Bear in mind, a lot of the Surface Duo's selling points is around its integration with Microsoft. That's been brewing for some time. That's not unique to the Surface Duo. That's been worked on for a long time. You've seen Android apps of Microsoft Word, Outlook, and all the rest of them. So that integration's begun already. It's equally been done on iPhone. So, down the line, I could maybe see more work being done there. But, let's be honest, Apple were never going to work and create a Microsoft device. So, of course it had to be Android. And it makes a lot of sense to do that because people may be coming to this from a different Android experience, or they may be coming to and having already bought the apps and all of that. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to do this.
Well, you know what, Stephen? Later on in the show, we're going to go hands-on with the Surface Duo. We're going to talk about the form factor, talk about the screens, talk about the experience. But before we get to that, we're going to take a break and come back and bring on a guest from this week's show. His name is Daniel Rubino, and he's the executive editor of Windows Central. This site has been reviewing and analyzing Microsoft for many, many years. Let's take a quick break and come back here on Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo, and our guest, Daniel Rubino, is on deck here on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We are back on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys for being here. If you want to get involved, our email address is feedback@doubletap.online. On Twitter, we are @DoubleTapCanada. And if you use the hashtag AskDoubleTap, Stephen Scott will personally get back to your tweet. Don't you love if I do that, Stephen? I obviously commit you to these things that you don't necessarily want to do. I think it's like my little internal joke exactly. I got going here.
I'm a huge fan of social media, and thank you for throwing me under the bus. I think today's bus number is 43, Mark.
Oh, bus number 43. Well, Stephen, I'm very excited about our next guest. He is the executive editor of Windows Central. His name is Daniel Rubino. Daniel, welcome to Double Tap TV. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
It's good to talk because we're all a rave about this little device that I have here in my hands, which is the Surface Duo from Microsoft. Now, I remember about a year ago when they first announced this device, my impression was, okay, this is interesting. This could really be a game changer. I'm curious what your impressions were when they announced it versus today when you have it in your hands.
Yeah, so, I should highlight, we do have a story coming out in Windows Central sometime this week on the history of how this device actually came to be, which would be really interesting because this goes back all the way to 2014. But the phone was a surprise because this kind of came out of nowhere. This is a revision of the Project Andromeda that was rumored in 2017, 2018 was going to run Windows. That got basically canceled for reasons we'll go into in this article this week. So seeing that on stage, even that was the one thing the press did not know about. And we weren't pre-briefed on anything. And the only way we knew what was happening was because of leaks in our own reporting. So that moment where it rings and he pulls that out of his pocket and all that kind of thing, it's the reason I really enjoy attending Surface events is you still get those moments of butterflies and oh my God, whereas Apple and Samsung, everything's known weeks in advance. It's just give me the price. That's all I need to know. So it was a very exciting time for that announcement.
So what makes this device so special?
One is categorization. That is, how do you categorize this device? And the reason I say that is because everybody immediately goes to the Samsung Galaxy Fold and Fold 2, which they fold. And this technically folds too, but they're actually radically different devices. And it's not that one's better than the other. They just deliver different experiences depending on what you actually want and value. So the Fold 2 is a single screen device. It's a single screen tablet that then folds into a smaller phone. This is a dual screen phone. And that's a very different thing. So the Fold 2 will run mostly Android tablet apps that scale that way, whereas this one really doesn't. It runs basically side-by-side phone apps. And the theory behind this, and it's a story I'm working on with Microsoft, is that when you actually have two physical displays in front of you, your brain processes this differently than having a single screen with two like windows snapped together. And they compared it to using a single screen device and a single screen folded device. And they saw people's brains light up differently. And so that's what I'm trying to get after is I want to see that research. I want to talk to the people behind it. They're just taking that concept and trying to bring it down to the mobile scale. Like if it works there, can it work mobile?
You know, Daniel, philosophically, Microsoft has gone on record saying that they build devices like this because they can. They can take a risk, they can spend millions of dollars, and if it fails, they can put it on the shelf and continue on with their day and still make tons of money with their services, which is something that their partners can't necessarily do. So it's interesting and also eye-opening, at least on my end, to kind of see that kind of that development cycle. So I'm curious what your take is on that side of things, where they're doing something, they're releasing it to the market. It's not necessarily for everybody. I really don't think this is a device for everybody. I got it because I think it's a proof of concept that's going to lead to what we're going to see down the road for the next 10 years. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a risk for them, which is why it's kind of hard to find. It's only released in the United States. They're not doing a big marketing push. They really want to see people are going to use this. If it catches on, they'll expand the markets. But yeah, it's a risk for them. But they do, I will say, really, really believe in this and have a multi-year plan for it, including new devices and stuff. And so that's going to be the fun thing to, I think, really watch over the next few months.
So how much does this device tell us about the future for Microsoft devices?
Yeah, so there's a lot of question about them using Android, for instance. Like that was a shock, right? It's still weird. And yet it kind of makes sense. Under Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft in 2015, they started to become a different company, a company that cooperates with other tech companies. And Microsoft wants to be basically the good guy. They want to help everybody out to make their products and services better too. So even with the Duo, they see this, nothing's proprietary. I mean, the hardware is, but the software they're doing with Android goes upstream back to Google so other OEMs can use it because Microsoft wants other OEMs to make similar devices. I heard people go, well, Samsung will just come out and make one better. Okay, so let them.
I think it makes a lot of sense now, too, now that we've seen some of the gaming announcements where Project xCloud is going to be available on Android devices. You can see that there's other synergies there. I really like the fact that they combined a couple apps for you. For example, Outlook and To Do in this plan, so it automatically launched it on both screens, which is cool, which really does tell you exactly who their target market is for this device, which is the business users. I want to quote one of the tweets that you put out recently, which was, there's a lot to like here and a ton of potential, but some early issues with the OS that Surface Duo, that holds it back from greatness. But then you go on to say that can be addressed through monthly updates, which is what the coolest part about this is that hardware, you nailed like all the basics and all the important things, and really blew our mind in terms of the design. And the rest can really be solved with software just because it has year-old specs. Those year-old specs still hold up to some of the best smartphones today. So, what are your thoughts on where the software goes? Is this thing going to get lost in the shuffle of new flagship devices, coming in the coming months, or are we going to be paying attention to this over the next year?
Yeah, that's really something that, I mentioned on my podcast with Windows Central that the real test here is in 3 months, 6 months, are we still talking about this device, right? Because there is this tendency to move on to the next big thing. Like today, for instance, the LG Wing is making press, right? So there's always that next device. And does Surface Duo continue to grow and hold interest? Do we see developers actually making apps that do the dual screen thing? That's going to be a fun story to follow because that's really going to be. They're still going to do a version 2. Don't worry. I mean, no matter what kind of happens with this version, they're definitely doing version 2. It's already in development. They're already going through the process. We're expecting it late 2021. Makes sense, right? A year later kind of thing. Regarding the update, so Microsoft has promised 3 years of Android OS and security updates, which matches now Samsung and Google. Technically, OnePlus does this a bit too, but the industry standard has been 2 years up to this point for Android devices. And so this is actually kind of nice. They're also doing monthly updates, and then we'll be publishing the changelog on the Surface site for that. Yeah, they are expecting, they have, like I said, a roadmap. For instance, I can tell you double tap to wake is coming probably next month. So these updates aren't going to just be security fixes. They're going to be bug fixes as well. It'll get Android 11 as soon as that's ready for this device. But we should really start to see the feature set improve with new things. For instance, you can't change the icons right now in Microsoft Launcher. That's unusual. That's not the permanent plan, though. Like, they want to get the core fundamentals right on version 1 right out the gate. And then it's a scaffold. They're going to build off of it. And if you think that stinks, I keep telling people iOS, when that came out, couldn't do copy and paste, right? It didn't even have apps. Like, the theory of iOS back then was you used a web browser for everything. It was only after pushback and people were like, no, we want apps, that they actually designed the SDK for the iPhone. I've never had this device freeze on me, lock up, require reset, an app suddenly close out, lose information. Like, those are the real dramatic things that like really are bad on the device experience. This is more just like little annoyances. Like, you go to grab the notification shade and maybe you get the wrong gesture, or the keyboard doesn't pop up in a certain app for just one time. Like, it's little stuff like that, which for some people really bothers them. Where for me, I'm like, all right, whatever, move on. So I'm sure we'll see lots of software tweaks coming from them in the next few months.
Well, Daniel, I hope that you'll join us again to talk about some of those tweaks down the road. Where can people find you? Obviously, Windows Central. Just search for Daniel Rubino, you'll find you. But on Twitter, you are Daniel _Rubino, correct?
Correct. Yeah, same thing with Instagram. And on Reddit. I managed to secure that name everywhere. But yeah, follow me there, and I'll you can come along for the ride for the Surface Duo. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Daniel Rubino, the executive editor at Windows Central. Thank you so much for being here this week. We're definitely going to keep in touch with him as they continue their Surface Duo journey. But guys, we want to get hands-on with the Surface Duo and give you all the details that you're itching to hear about. So stick around. It is Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Marco Flalo. We'll be back in just a moment.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being here. I am Marco Flalo, as always, joined by Stephen Scott. Stephen, Daniel Rubino, he's been doing this for a very long time. He had the opportunity, because he lives in the United States, to get his hands on the Surface Duo. I had to finagle. I wish I could explain this whole story, but I don't think we have enough time. But I did manage to get my hands on a Surface Duo, and I have it right here in my hands in all its glory. And I don't even know where to start with this device. I think really, for everybody out there, we got to describe the physicality of it. When it's closed, in its closed form factor, and I'll put the stylus aside, we'll talk about that after, it's roughly the size of a Canadian passport. Probably a little bit taller than the passport itself. If you put it next to an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, you can see that it's probably about about 4.5 inches tall by about 3.5 inches, 3.5. I would say about 4 inches wide by about 5 inches tall, which is an interesting perspective. And then when you open it up, it's probably about half the size of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. The screens, Stephen, on this device are where this really sets itself apart from any other device, especially any other folding device, because instead of having a screen that folds and worrying about technology like that, what they've done here is they've put two separate screens. Now, the entire length of the screens, you've got 8.1 inches diagonally. The resolution is 1800 by 2700 pixels, which is a pretty good viewing, surface, I guess, if you want to call it that. On the right side of this device, there's a fingerprint reader that is very intuitive, very simple to use. You just put your finger on there and it unlocks the device. You've got a sleep-wake button over here on the right side as well, a volume rocker, and that's it in terms of physicalities and buttons on the device on the outside. On the back, you'll notice there's nothing. It's just glass with the Windows logo on it and a nice white finish. And that's pretty much the only option you can choose from is storage, because there's no color options or anything that this device gives you the choice of. One camera, Stephen, It's a front-facing camera on the inside. If you want to take pictures of the outside world, all you do is you turn that backwards and you fold the device in half, and you get a nice viewfinder on one side, and you've got the camera on the other side to take your pictures. I think hardware-wise, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong, I think this is pretty baked in terms of the hardware.
Yeah, I mean, Surface hardware is always of a high quality, so I think that's pretty good. Software-wise, I think we have to be clear on this. It's running Android. It's not running Windows. This isn't another Windows phone, is it? Thank goodness. So, it's one of these phones that you're going to use with, you're going to be used to. If you're an Android fan, you're going to be used to using this kind of software. I guess my question is, Mark, you've had a chance to play with this now. What's your thoughts on a dual screen, essentially a dual screen smartphone? What do you do with it?
Well, I've had the opportunity, and we talked about the Galaxy Flip earlier on in the show and the Galaxy Fold, and I think the division down the middle of the screen is actually something that helps the experience. I think when they try to make this screen that folds, or when they do make the screen that folds, your impression is that it's one giant screen, whereas this really feels like, it's kind of like when you walk into an office space, and as Daniel Rubino said in the interview, there's a consciousness around having two physical displays. It's almost like two separate desktops. And what they've done here is kind of ingenious, because they've even packaged the Android software and the Microsoft software within the Android operating system in a way that already shows you that right off the bat. And what I mean, Stephen, is you see there's a couple apps here. It says Learn, Plan, Discover, and Share. And when I hit Plan, for example, what it does is it opens two Microsoft apps. It opens Outlook on the left side and opens To Do on the right side. So it's showing you right away, this is one way for you to use this device, especially in the workplace. You can be watching and reading your emails on the left and going, okay, I need to add this to my to-do list. And then on the right, you can be adding things to your to-do list. Of course, this is similar when it goes to other software experiences. You can be browsing something on the left or the right while taking notes on the other side. You can be in a Skype conversation or a Zoom conversation on one side while doing something on the other side.
Yeah, I think you're right. It has a huge amount of potential, but I also feel like I'm listening to you describe someone wearing a suit. Shirt and tie. It's a business device. It's built for that kind of businessy person. It doesn't sound a very sexy device.
It is sexy in terms of the hardware itself. Like, it is absolutely a definition of what future computing is going to look like in terms of how thin they got it, how svelte they got it across the board. Right now, I've got a bumper on it, but the bumper comes off. And I'll show you how it looks like without the bumper, because it's just a glass sandwich, You take the bumper off, and it looks even sexier. It doesn't look, you lose the bulk, and it folds beautifully 360 degrees. So if I look at you from the side angle here, you can see that it's folding all the way outwards, and it is an absolutely sexy piece of hardware. But when you think about the business aspects and you think about Microsoft as a service, they are creating business services. Yeah. They are creating software for business, and they're pricing this in the $1,300-$1,400 range.
That's what Microsoft
not something
do.
an everyday consumer.
That's what Microsoft do, isn't it? They produce great business hardware now, as well as software. And so I guess it makes sense the Surface Duo comes along into that category. But I can't imagine many young people, young kids especially, wanting to get their hands on one of these. They're going to want the Samsung Z Fold.
Stephen, that's all the time we got for this week. I want to thank Daniel Rubino for being here, executive editor at Windows Central. Thank you guys at home for being here. On behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. We'll catch you again next week on another edition of Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing, Will Attar. Production assistants, Wendy Kaufman. Content review, Zachary Aflalo. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director Production, Kara Nye. Director Programming, Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2020, Accessible Media, Inc.